Sounds like a pretty brutal place, pretty brutal market to be involved in. High risk, you don't know anything, low appreciation potential, significant chance for losses. Why would anyone want to keep their money in that market when you could move it into a house, which has, let's review the advantages. Low risk, good. Strong appreciation potential, it will triple in 10 years. Capital protection, you won't lose your money. Only an idiot would not take this investment opportunity, would they not?
In the case of experience, they thought they knew about the market, but as the case states, there were no consents among the people why the price were moving, and there were no analysis of the fundamentals of why this was happening. So they really didn't know about it.
So you're saying that maybe they didn't have as much information as maybe they thought they had. Okay.
I think to add to that experience thing, people who technically should have had experience in the market weren't saying anything. The real estate agents wanted to sell houses, so they're not going to tell you, hey, maybe you should fix federal business, or the banks are going to give you loans, you're going to get interest on it.
But you know, one of the interesting things is that if you look at the profile of the people who participated in this survey, many of them are actually moving, they already have a house. So many of them actually, in terms of their participation in this market, are moving from a house just to a bigger home, presumably, or to another home, better home maybe. So presumably they have some experience already in this market. I think it was about 50-50. So half of them are first time, or maybe slightly less, and then more of them are actually already homeowners and they're buying up, right? So they've actually presumably been in these markets already for some period of time. We're looking at a market that's had improving conditions since 1996, roughly 97, so 5 or 6 years at this point. So I'm not sure how, this idea of experience, I think many of them probably did have experience. One of the things that these participants are doing is sort of sitting on their house, watching it year to year to year, going up in value.
I was going to say, one of the strange things I saw in there was the fact that I think like 60% of them had been called and asked if they want to sell their house when it wasn't even listed, which I think is that just sticks out a huge red flag. That doesn't happen.
In terms of an investment, in terms of them seeing their house as an investment, do you think that reinforces the idea that housing is good? Right, because it actually reinforces this idea of demand. I mean, the demand is so robust that people are actually calling you to sell an asset that you actually haven't listed for sale necessarily. So absolutely, I think it increases that sense of demand out there for the asset. If we stand back and look then at what our market respondents said, and we've put it in this matrix, and you'll now recognize this matrix as basically an asset allocation matrix, right? So in other words, we're thinking about this in terms of how we allocate capital and the kinds of readings that we put onto that allocation. What are we looking at here? What are we seeing? Based on what our participants tell us, this is the most compelling market ever. I mean, if you can reduce your risk, guarantee your capital, and triple your money in a decade, and it costs very little to borrow the money to do that, who would not want to jump into that market? To put this in perspective, Bernie Madoff was only giving his clients 6, 7 and change. This is about twice the Madoff standard for absolutely no risk capital preservation, constant increase of your money strategy. Twice as good. What kind of a person would not want to invest, would not invest under these terms? Lower risk, higher appreciation potential with a capital guarantee. What's the name, what word might we use to describe a person who would turn down that investment opportunity?
Rational investor.
A what?
Rational investor.
A rational investor. I'm going to agree. The word that we would use to describe someone who would not accept that investment is rational, because it's not rational. It's an irrational premise. Who really believes that you could lower your risk, guarantee your capital, and get 14% a year? There's a reason why Bundesbonds give you 0.5%. That's the price of capital protection. You don't get to guarantee your capital and get 14%. It's a very irrational premise indeed upon which to make an investment. If we stand back and we evaluate this in basic grade 7 investment allocation strategies, your little kid could probably do better. What are we seeing? The trend in equities, so that other asset where we're seeing money being pulled out in order to fund the purchase. What's the trend in equities during this period, 2002? Up or down? Down. What's the trend in housing? Up. Okay. They are perceiving equities as volatile, with lower appreciation potential and higher risk. Basic economics. In the aggregate, as the value of an asset class decreases, what happens to its risk? Does it go up or down? In the aggregate. As the value of an asset class decreases, what happens to its risk? Goes down, right? Positive correlation. As the value of an asset decreases, what happens to its appreciation potential? Increases. Conversely, housing, an upward trend. As the value of an asset increases, what happens to its risk? Goes up. What happens to its appreciation potential? Goes down. So our market participants are actually reading the market in a perfectly wrong way. They've actually taken what we would expect to be the behavior of an asset, and they've simply flipped it. We might summarize their behavior according to a well-known dictum, the lesson for being successful, which is, what are they doing? Sell low, buy high. It's a guaranteed way to make money every single time, right? If you can consistently sell sell low and buy high, you're just a money-making machine. A money-making machine. It would make sense if they didn't see it as an investment. If they simply saw it in purely utilitarian terms, why not? If my goal is I simply want to move into a house, fair enough. But insofar as they specified it as an investment, I see my purchase of a house as an investment, it then makes sense to map onto that a kind of investment logic. When we map the investment allocation logic onto their housing purchase considered as an investment, we come up with perfectly irrational agents. I define a perfectly irrational agent as someone who is a perfectly rational agent, completely inverted. Completely inverted, right? With expecting exactly the opposite of what a rational agent would expect. A rational agent would accept that if they want their capital to be protected, that it will come at the cost of lower than average returns. But no, we have people who believe that they can get higher than average returns at lower than average risk. It is a perfectly irrational point of view to hold. So the question that we have is, and then in terms of scrutinizing this market, in terms of understanding the participants, is to ask the question, how did people come to believe in these terms? How did they come to think of this market in this way? How can we explain this apparently perfectly irrational behavior? By the way, a definition of a bubble is that. When a market that looks like that seems like a very attractive opportunity.